see you two top king. It's okay. What? No problem, Tupac. Two top king. Blessings, blessings, greetings, 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 greetings. All right, y'all. 74% debt to GDP. That's what we want to talk about tonight, right? We want to talk money, the economy. Orlando, big up yourself. The usual suspect is in the building. To music, my friend, what's up? How is ATL doing? How is ATL doing? All right, so tell a friend, tweet a friend, phone a friend, tell a friend we're live. We're on the block, the Chops Media, with the one and only Chopper. Nadine, the Dockery, how are ya? Garfield, you're in the building. I see Annette is in the building. Pamela is in the building. Yes, Jamaica's debt to GDP is down. And we're almost hitting the international standard of 65%. These are unprecedented, uncharted water. We have never been here before. So we want to talk about it. We want to talk about how does that affect the average Joe. Well, if you listen today, you'd hear a lot of communities are saying yes, they're getting the adjustment in prices. Elaine Planter, big up yourself. Garfield Reed, you're in the building. Kenroy Thomas is in the building. Sister Bev Nelson is in the building. We see the two top king is in the building. I want y'all to follow that YouTube channel as well. Two Top King. That's my tech app. Y'all, that's my 11-year-old, man. He is awesome. Awesome kid. Please go out there and follow his YouTube channel. Annette, big up yourself. Tracy and McLean, how are ya? I trust that y'all are doing great. And y'all are motivated and excited about what's happening in beautiful Jamaica, land we love. Well. Yesterday we had an exciting presentation by the Prime Minister, the most honorable Andrew Michael Holness, and he went in. He went in and he spoke passionately about his government and their tenure. One of the things he said yesterday that really resonates with a lot of Jamaicans is when he brought the statistics and told us that Jamaica's debt to GDP is now at 74%. Yes, that is significant, folks. I'm gonna post the link as usual in the chat, and if you guys want to join us, please feel free to do so. That's the Yard Stream link in the chat. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna pin it right here so you guys can see it. And if you feel like you want to join us, then feel free to go ahead and do so. So that's the, let's see, hold on. Let's see. All right. Trying to figure this thing out, folks. Don't kill us. But we just posted in the chat. I think one of our admins could probably pin it there for us so it stays on the top there. But yes, so our so the link, if you want to join us, if you want to make a contribution to the discussion of Jamaica's debt to GDP being at 74%, please feel free. That's that StreamYard link. It's right there, and whenever you feel like you want to hop in and chit chat with us, just make sure you have a clean and bright background if you're coming on camera. If not, you can always come in and on audio. But Steve Nugent, big up yourself. Garfield Reed, you're saying the government must be hailed for the reduction in the debt to GDP. We need the government to make sure that the consumer gets a break. Very good comment there, Garfield. The government must be commended for managing this country's economy over the last 8 years or so, and have performed in a way that we can really and truly see the benefits coming forward. There was a time, guys, when our debt to GDP was at a whopping 140%. And as you know it, I'm going to share the program. When we get to about 100, then we will get into the meat of the matter. But guys, we're coming from afar. Two top king. That's my protege right there. Go ahead, guys, and give him a follow, please. That's his little YouTube channel. Big him up for me, no? The Two Top King. Give him a follow, please. But there was a time in this country when all we knew was price increase, new taxes, and wage freeze. And that's the sort of thing that the Prime Minister spoke about yesterday. I don't know at what point, Nadine, Orlando, Annette, I don't know at what point we're going to get to the stage where we can have this discussion and both sides can agree that where Jamaica is today we have a lot to give thanks for and a lot of credit to be given for the steady leadership and management of the country's economy. I don't know if we'll ever get to that level, but I am hoping that we'll get there one day when we can honestly say to people that this country is definitely in safe hands. It's been a really, really, really rough period that we have gone through. The 1990s literally wiped us off the map, wiped us out totally. And we went through, again, a global pandemic where the rest of the world, including Jamaica, was shut down. I don't know if anybody here recognized that during COVID, we had a year, we have about 14 months, a year plus, that a single cruise ship did not dock in Jamaica. The entire cruise shipping industry went flat, went O-U-T, out. And, we take these things for granted. Every single hotel in Jamaica was empty. We had to put every tourist we had on a bus, on a flight, get them out of here. There were Jamaicans who tried to come into their own country and couldn't get in. We were on lockdown. We just could not move. And that's the reality of what Jamaica has gone through since 2020. It's 2023 today. And Jamaica has emerged from all that COVID has done to the world. Jamaica, little Jamaica, 144 square mile, little Jamaica has emerged to being one of the strongest economy in the region in terms of rebounding from COVID. And the only person in the Western Hemisphere that would speak bad about Jamaica are Jamaicans. It's sad. It's sad when the World Bank, the IMF, the WHO, and other world leaders all over the world can give Jamaica credit for where they are today. But yet our own Jamaicans find it difficult to say to the government and to Jamaicans that we're doing well. Instead, we take all that positive information about Jamaica and we repurpose it, repackage it, weaponize it, and unleash it back on the Jamaican people in a negative way. That is shameful. That's the sort of cycle we've been going through for the last 3 years. We've been going through it for a while, but it has intensified within the last 2 years because of political expediency. It's a very, very sad state of affair. When you can take all that positive things that people from all over the world, I remember when Jamaica started to put their policies and systems in place to deal with COVID-19, there were countries that was asking us, touching base with Dr. Tufton, touching base with Nigel Clark, our finance minister, to get feedback from them as to how they create the sort of support and response to COVID. It's very sad, you know. It's very sad. It's hard when others can see the good within yourself and you fail to recognize it. People from all over the world, man, would say how good Jamaica has managed themselves. How good Jamaica would have done throughout COVID. And yet you have not foreigners, not Trinidad and Tobago, not people in Barbados, not people in Turks and Caicos Island, not our brothers and sisters down in Grenada. Our own Jamaicans are the ones who are criticizing us and who are taking those positive information and turning them into a weapon of mass destruction. When you look at the World Bank and IDB head that came to Jamaica a few days ago, this man was just newly elected as chief of the World Bank. And his first trip in that capacity was to a little island in the Caribbean, 144 square miles, with a leader, a dynamic leader, and a cabinet of some high achievers and stellar performers. He made his trip to Jamaica to look at some of the projects we have and look at what we're doing. There are several other countries that are signatory to the IDB and the World Bank leaders, and they choose to come to Jamaica. These are things that we should be proud of. How can you have that sort of support, and then you have persons from within the halls of Jamaica that will take all that positive stuff, weaponize it, and unleash it on the Jamaican people as being a negative? It's shameful. Shameful. But let us talk about the debt to GDP. The debt to GDP back in 2013, 2012 was somewhere in the region of 146 to 147. It went up to 148 at one. And for us to bring that down to where it's at today, let me just explain something to some of my folks who sometimes wonder what it means. It means that back in 2012, and even before that, Jamaica was spending what we never earned. We had to borrow money to do what economists call housekeeping matters. Paying light, paying for oil, paying teachers, paying doctors. That's the sort of economy that we had 2012, 2013. That's what we had. And for some reason, persons have short memory. Because we were spending 148 out of 100. And any math student will tell you, my 11-year-old is a maths pro, love mathematics. And if I ask him, how do I spend 148 out of 100? He will say, Daddy, that's a negative. That's a negative. It can't happen unless you're going to borrow from one to bring it over there. Arithmetics 101. So for many years, Jamaica was spending $148, but we were only $1. So where did that 48 came from? That 48 came from money that we borrow at very high interest rate. Extremely high interest rate. I remember in 2006, 2005, right throughout the 2000s, when then Audley Shaw was the minister, was the shadow minister of finance. And he kept saying to the government, the then government, that you cannot continue to borrow money at such high interest rate. The finance minister of the time was none other than Dr. Omar Davis. And he was borrowing money at some crazy interest rate. And when he comes to Parliament, one of the things that he was very proud of was to tell the Jamaican people how much money we got to borrow. And every time, every quarter, every few months, you would hear of a delegation leaving Jamaica. Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Finance, Permanent Secretary, and other technocrats in the ministry at the time jump on a plane and they went overseas. That delegation, most times, was led by Dr. Omar Davis. Upon his return to Jamaica, one of the things that we would get from him is how much money we got to borrow. I'm telling you, and I'm not making this up. This is factual information. We pride ourselves during the 90s and the 2000s on how much money we can get to borrow. That's what Dr. Omar Davis gave us. And when you borrow that amount of money and you come back, and we're borrowing it at high interest rate, guys. So we were basically plunging ourselves deeper into debt. So when we have the debt to GDP at 148%, what it says is that our capacity was at $1 and we had to borrow $48 to supplement that budget. Every single year for decades, we had to do that. And for us to be at a stage now where we can we earn $1, but we spend 74 cents. So we are left with 26 cents of each dollar. Mark you, it used to be that we had to spend 48 cents more. So today, from every dollar that we earn, from taxes and otherwise, the little export that we do or whatever it is, we are now able, there's a space. When you hear the highfalutin argument about fiscal space in the budget, that's what it is. There's a space now for us to spend more. Now, debt to GDP at a government level, I could bring it down to the home, to your house. I'm going to tell you something where you probably don't want to hear it, but I should. When you have a credit card for, let's say, $100,000, that's your limit on your credit card, and you max out that credit card, you spend every penny on it, and a matter of fact, you overspend as well, because you spend $150,000 because the bank give you an extra, but you're paying a high interest rate on it. So it's the same thing. You max out your credit card and you're earning. What do? Do you continue to run that credit card which you're paying interest on? Or do you bite the bullet and pay it down? So increase whatever you're making from your salary. Put some more on your credit card, pay it down. Because every time you pay down that credit card, your interest rate on reducing balance goes down. Eventually, you'll get it at a stage that you can either manage it there or you can pay it off totally. And that's the same thing that the country is going through. The same cycle that the country goes through is the same cycle that us as individuals, is the same style of management that you apply to yourself. There's no difference in it. So when the opposition is recommending to the government as an alternative that they should not pay down the debt, but instead take 2 or 3% or 4% of the GDP and put it in a brown envelope and give it to people, is crazy. It's foolish. Very foolish. But the good thing is, if the opposition can tell you what's on their mind and tell you what they would do if they were government, it put us as voters, as Jamaicans, in a better position to choose who we want to run the country's affair. Because, mark my word, a leopard usually never changes his spot. But you must take a man at his words. If the opposition say to you that if we were government, we would not pay down the debt and create any fiscal space in the budget so we can spend more. Instead, we would take that money that would pay in the debt and we would perhaps put it in some brown envelope and give it to some people. That's the option that the opposition is giving the Jamaican people. But it's a good thing, Daniel. It's a good thing, Gary, because at least the Jamaican voters have an idea as to what the options are, and they will have to choose whether they want to stick with the Andrew Holness-led administration, who will continue to pay down the debt, creating fiscal space in the budget, bring us down to international standard. We are just an inch away from that now. Coming from 148% debt to GDP to 74 is no small feat. This is big deal for Jamaica. Big deal. And I'm happy that people like Dr. Omar Davis and Dr. Peter Phillips, they are still alive to witness this. I'm happy that Audley Shaw is still alive to witness this. I'm happy that Hugh Small is still alive to witness this. Because these are persons who work in government for years and would have worked in an environment where these things were just wishful thinking. To see a debt to GDP at 74% was wishful thinking just a few years ago. This was not something that anybody could imagine. So back in COVID, when you hear people talking about, oh, it's Bill Gates come to Jamaica and give us some money, and people question and asking where we get so much money from, how we can create these packages to give back to people and to stimulate and to stabilize the country during the pandemic. And people wondering where the money is coming from. But it's quite simple. If you pay down your debt, you have more to spend. And that's exactly what the country did. We pay down our debt, it creates some space, we can buy more fire truck, we can buy more garbage truck, which we have done. We can spend more on the military, which we have done. And we did what needed to be done in terms of reforming the public sector wages, creating a space in a budget where you can facilitate $100 billion to give back to public sector is not something for us to take for granted, because over 40 years we've been trying to do it and couldn't do it. Right? 40 years we've been trying to do that and we couldn't do it. And because we manage the economy so well, it put the government in a position where they could, do it with such ease. But if you understand right now as it is, if a hurricane were to hit Jamaica, a category 5 hurricane, Jamaica is in a position right now that we don't have to go out there and beg anybody. We can finance the rebuilding of the country by ourselves. We can. We can finance the rebuilding of Jamaica should in case we are hit by a hurricane. Right? And these are not things for us to take for granted. But let's take a quick break. We're gonna take a break and come back. And we're gonna go a little bit deeper into why I say if a hurricane should hit Jamaica today, we are in safe hands and we would not have to jump on a plane and make phone calls for persons to send us some zinc or for Cuba to give us some light bulb. We're not being ungrateful and we're not boasting as if we are rich, but we are in a better position than we were a few years ago. Stick and stay. We'll be right back.
We'd like to invite you to come back. Back to playful. Back to adventurous. Back to back to the little things that can have a big impact. It's time. Come back to the way you always imagined it. In Jamaica.
All right, so welcome back, folks. Thank you for sticking and staying with us. Yeah, so I said just now that we are in a position where if we were to be hit, God forbid, knock on wood, if we were to be hit by a hurricane today, we are so situated that we can rebuild this country without really and truly going out there and begging on our knees, because we have set aside and we have created these buffers. We have created these insurance. We have created these sort of support, standby arrangement and support for rainy days. And these are things that a lot of persons don't know. If you compare Jamaica where it's at today, we're in a safe space. We're not perfect. We're not in a perfect position. But where we are today, we are in a better position than we have ever been in over 30 years. And what is painful, as the Prime Minister say, is when people can take that, turn it around, weaponize it, and unleash it back on the Jamaican people. When you can take all that positive gain in the country and create a weapon from it, it is tantamount to treason. And I say that without no apology. Because how can you do that? How can the rest of the world recognize us for what we have achieved during this period? And yet the persons who live it, who experience, who are part of it, fail to acknowledge it. Instead, we twist it and turn it and add to it and bring it back into the Jamaican space as negative news. It's very sad. Very sad. Debt to GDP, Rowan Taylor, Nadine Dacre, Shanette, and Steve Nugent. Debt to GDP at 74% is no small feat. It's something for us to celebrate. It can only get better, guys. Think about it. It can only get better. And the only thing that could put Jamaica, the only thing right now, a hurricane cannot do it. An earthquake cannot do it. We have the highest net international reserve that this country has ever seen. We have that today. And not even a hurricane could set us off track. But I can tell you that if we make the mistake and go to the polls and decide to vote and bring back the persons who wiped us out in the 1990s, that hurricane is going to be worse than any other Category 5, Category 6 hurricane that could ever hit Jamaica. That's why we have to be very careful. Yes, you don't have to like the labor rights. You don't have to like GLP. You don't have to. The two top king says, especially when global GDP goal is 60%. What? That's what he says. He says, especially when global GDP goal is 60%. And we are currently two top king. We are at 74. So we are 14% away from the global target. And if everything works according to plan, as I said, it can only get better. So when you put yourself in a position where you can have 40 cents out of each dollar to spend, what that really means, guys, if we now today can spend $100 billion on public sector wages, giving some nurses and doctors and teachers up to 300%. If we can do that now at 74% debt to GDP, can you imagine with an extra $14 cents out of each dollar? Can you imagine us with 40 cents out of each dollar to spend now? Then if we're talking about an extra 50 garbage truck, which is going to move the new garbage truck up from 50 brand new to 100 by the end of this year. Then if we can buy 100 brand new garbage truck, when the debt to GDP is at 74%, then when it reaches 60%, we can put a garbage truck in every community in Jamaica. Every division, if you want to use the political term. We have 228 political constituency divisions, electoral divisions in Jamaica. If we bring debt to GDP down to 60%, then we can put a garbage truck in every division. Just think about it. Think about the possibilities are endless. If we can buy 200 brand new electric bus with debt to GDP at 74%, can you imagine when we get to 60, as the little man says, two top king says, with global GDP goal, he says, is at 60%. And we are almost there. So when people take them kind of positive and turn it into negative, you would expect your enemy to do that. You would expect somebody who envy Jamaica to do that. You would expect somebody who live in another country to do that. You could expect somebody who benefit from Jamaica, who live in Jamaica, who earn in Jamaica, who raise their families in Jamaica to do that. So, well, two top king, you can research it, man. You're a good research kid, you know. Research it and find the correct information and post it here for us. What is the global target for debt to GDP? It is around about 60%. You are correct. It's about 65 or 60%. So think about it, guys. Think about a Jamaica when you dial 119. When you dial 119 in a matter of minutes, 3 minutes to 5 minutes, a fire truck, a police car, and an ambulance is at your door. That is what 60% debt to GDP will bring us. That is what 60% debt to GDP will bring us. If you can spend $100 billion to give teachers up to 200 and 300% increase on their salaries in terms of the adjustment, then when you get to 60%, you can spend $400 billion. At that time, you can pay the average teacher, the average public sector worker in line with first world standard. We are almost there. We are almost there, inches away. Inches away from getting that. Right? So we have to stay focused. This is not the time to get jittery. This is not the time for us to get excited and act a fool. It's the time to settle and stay focused. There's a target and a goal ahead for us to achieve. And for those who don't want to be a part of that achievement, I can't tell them to take 5 flights a day, because that was a very unkind way to go. Share the program, guys. I didn't ask you, but go ahead and share the program. Tell your friend, tell everybody, tweet a friend, call a friend, phone a friend, post it all over. Tell somebody that Jamaica debt to GDP is at 74% and we are celebrating. It needs to be celebrated. So tell everybody in the little corner and explain to them what it means. It means that we have right now 30 cents. We're at 74, not 30 cents. We have 26 cents out of each dollar to spend. And it is on that basis where we can afford to do some of the things that we are doing. So what we're saying, Camille, thank you for joining us, Camille. What we're saying is, if the country can achieve what we have achieved so far with a debt to GDP at 74%, and let's just accept that we are at 74 now. Can you imagine what we can achieve when we get to 60%? We are going to be in a position where when you dial 119, a police car should show up at your gate, an ambulance, and a fire truck. When you get to that 60% mark of debt to GDP, your police officers should not be complaining about a salary and how much they are underpaid and overworked. When you get to that level, we shouldn't have any teachers applying for jobs overseas because they believe they can earn a better salary. When we get to that 60% mark, we should be bringing in 20 million tourists to Jamaica. If debt to GDP is at 74%, our national security should be at first world standard. We shouldn't have drain issue. The water problem that has bedeviled Jamaica for years should be fixed. So people must understand the implications and the benefit to derive from paying down your debt and managing the country's economy. I said earlier that if we were to be hit, Camille, by a category 5 hurricane, God forbid, knock on wood, if we were to be hit by a cat 5 hurricane, Jamaica is so positioned now that we could rebuild this country without walking around the world on our knees, cap in hand. Because we have set aside and have put in place various mechanisms to prevent any or any severe effect from any external shock. Perfect. But some of the things that happen in and around the world can seriously affect Jamaica. But it affected Jamaica in the past because of how we were positioned. And let me give you one. A debt to GDP of 60%. Your neighbors, your international partners, the United States, Britain, Canada, will have to speak to us with a different tone. The reason why those first world countries like the United States and others would have in the past treated us like footcloth in some instances is simply because we did not have any choice. We had to be going to them with cap in hand begging. The days of Jamaica walking around borrowing money at high interest rate is gone. There's a time gone by when every road that is fixed in Jamaica was financed by some loan from the IDB or the IMF or some multilaterals overseas. We've never been in a position where we could do a project in Jamaica and do it from our own money collected from taxes. The PNP, while they were running the affairs of this country for 20 odd years, they have never done a project that was financed internally, locally. And let me not say that 100%, because there might be some instances where there were some joint ventures and such. So let me not blanketly say that. But I can tell you that what they have presided over years was to borrow to implement projects. We are now in a position where we can do the perimeter road in Montego Bay from local funding. We can do the Williamsfield leg of the South Coast Highway from local funding. We can do that stretch of road from Harborview heading east from local funding. We can pay public sector wages of $100 billion from local funding. Not a dollar was borrowed from overseas to do it. And you want to tell me that in all of that, people find something wrong and something negative to say, simply because they are hungry and desperate for power. Hungry and desperate for power. That's why you would look at a visit from the World Bank and IDB as something bad. That's why you could go back to people and tell them that when a government set aside $100 billion and move workers from $15,000 and $16,000 up to $60,000, 400%, some of them, we find that to be negative. When a country can afford to pay its parliamentarian a wage that is comparable to international standard and put those parliamentarians in a position where they can now be held accountable, and they are now in a position where they are not tempted to touch. They are not tempted to get involved in projects so as to benefit from it because their salary is adequate to take care of themselves and their family. How do you get a negative out of that? How do you get a negative out of a teacher who used to carry home $80,000 and now that teacher is carrying home $190,000? How does that become negative? How does a sitting councillor who was taking home for the year probably $1.5 million now, taking home $4 or $5 million. How can that be negative? How can an opposition leader who never even had, who was taking home somewhere in the region of $4 or $5 million and now taking home almost close to the Prime Minister's wage? How can that be negative? How can a Prime Minister who refuse to pocket his salary, giving it back to the country, how can that be negative? I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It puzzles me. But again, you're living in a world where people are so hungry for power that they will do just about anything. And that is the position that we have found ourselves in. We have found ourselves in a position where power is more important than people. We have found ourselves in a position where power is more important than people. And that is the reason why the opposition leader and the opposition surrogates could take some of the most positive gains from this country and turn it into a weapon and unleash it on the Jamaican people. We must see them for who they are. And a good game of poker. So you must see them and raise them. Yeah. The Prime Minister called some of them political entrepreneur. And for those of you who don't understand it, an entrepreneur is somebody who sees opportunity, sight a need and an opportunity to create a service with one intention in mind, is to make money. Well, those political entrepreneurs, their motivation is to get state power. And they will do just about anything to get state power. Prime Minister only spoke about that in Parliament. And he was very passionate when he spoke about them using information and turning it into negative ammunition. Folks, Donald Martin, how you do? Kevin Dixon, good to see you. But yeah, we're here, guys. We're talking about Jamaica's debt to GDP and the fact that it's at 74% now, and how important that is for Jamaica. The link is in the chat. If you guys want to join us, the StreamYard link is right there. Please feel free to hop on here if you want to contribute or participate in the discussion. We're talking about the debt to GDP and how important that is in how this country is growing and how this country is moving. It's not something for us to take lightly. It's something for us to celebrate. Japan is running a debt to GDP of 227%. Japan is running a debt to GDP of 227%. United States is running a high. England is running a high. Jamaica is treading and trending in the right direction. Most countries right around us have either gone into recession or they are very close to going into recession. Jamaica is treading and trending in the opposition of that. Jamaica is treading in the right direction where the economy is growing, there's stability, a stable dollar, and interest rate is where it needs to be, hovering in the region of 4 to 7%, which is what the BOJ target is. There are some who says the government is balancing the book, but they're not balancing people's life. This talk about balancing people's life is a political argument. Because when the book is balanced and when the economy functions, that is a tool that should balance people's lives. Political handout and care packages don't balance people's life. A little office to give you $10,000 here and there doesn't balance people's life. What balance people's life is when you create an environment that people can get sustainable jobs, so that people can create opportunities that will provide jobs. That is what we're talking about. So let's not get excited. I know a lot of people clamoring because they want election. I said it here last week that most people who are asking about election don't even know the cost to pay their workers. A general election or a local government election is not something that is done on voluntary service or free. It is something that requires money. And most of who are running around talking about they want the election don't even have the first dollar to pay their workers. So I say to you, breathe easy for a second, man. Stay focused and trust the process. Sometimes the best of us get a little weary sometimes because we are so deeply entrenched in the PNP propaganda machine that we get caught up. Patrice, welcome. Good to see you as well. We get so caught up in the PNP's propaganda machine that we fail to recognize some of the things that we just talked about. We fail to recognize that a debt to GDP at 74% is unprecedented. Because we get so caught up and we get so consumed with the PNP's narrative, we fail to recognize that we are 14% away from what the global target of debt to GDP per capita should be. Because we get so consumed, Clifford Murray and Jovi Spence, because we get so consumed by PNP's narratives, we fail to recognize that we are just around the corner from hitting a global economic target of 60-something% debt to GDP. To Rose and Derek, I say to you that if Jamaica, and I'm repeating this, I say to you that if Jamaica at 74% debt to GDP can buy 50 new garbage trucks on the heel of a pandemic and have ordered another 50 which is coming soon. If we can afford to buy 100 garbage trucks over 1 year period, can you imagine when we get to 60% debt to GDP? If at 74% debt to GDP, we can purchase 200 brand new electric buses, can you imagine us at 60% debt to GDP? And I know I'm repeating it because there are some new persons here. Mr. Dears, if we can afford to set aside $100 billion for public sector wages at 74% debt to GDP, can you imagine when we get to 60%? And that is where we need to focus on. That's why we need now no distraction. We need to be focused, laser focused on that target. Because if we can commit to fixing 2,000 roads within the next 12 months at a debt to GDP of 74%, can you imagine when we get to 60? It simply means that every single road in Jamaica, as the Prime Minister promised, will be at minimum a dual carriageway. These are the things we have to see a focus on. We cannot allow any distraction. I know sometimes some people get a little weary, Jovi. Sometimes people get a little weary, Jovi, because they're so caught up with the negative news. I remember a few years ago, when Trump was running for president against Hillary Clinton, and it was alleged that the Russian gave some assistance to Trump by infiltrating certain camps, using the information and weaponizing it and put it back into the space in the United States. Well, it's the same thing that we are facing today. The only difference is that we're not dealing with an external force. We're dealing with a force that we, the taxpayers, fund. We pay the leader of the opposition to do what? To tear down Jamaica? It's a sad situation, folks. But like I said before, we are in some we're in some space now that we have been before. But we are at a point where the economy is concerned. We have never been there before. And as such, we will have to, I see Ron Taylor is putting up the United States debt to GDP is at 99.9%. I'm hoping that's what it is. Double check that for me, no? Two top. Ron, double check that United States debt to GDP for me, no? And put that up if you can. But it tells you something. It tells you, Geneva, that there's hope for Jamaica. And one of the mistakes that we can make, and I'm hoping to God that we don't make it. I told you earlier, Mr. Dares, that if Jamaica were to be hit by a Category 5, Category 6 hurricane today, we are so positioned now that we can really and truly get this country back up and running in a matter of weeks using our own money and our own systems that have been put in place, the various insurance and stuff to get us back on track. And these are not something for us to take for granted because we have never been in that position before. We've always been a hand-to-mouth government. Now we can afford to do some of the things that we couldn't do years ago. I'm hoping that water, getting potable water into everybody's house in Jamaica, is going to be a part of the government's priority going forward. That's a winner right there. Too long, Jamaicans have suffered without having proper running water in and around their houses. 161% in 2022. What are we talking about there, two top? Are we talking about the United States debt to GDP? Come on, post that up there for me, man. I told you Japan was about 227% debt to GDP, but that doesn't affect Japan, having a high debt to GDP. And I'll tell you something, folks. Debt is not bad. It's how you manage it. It's how you manage it. Debt is not bad. It's how you manage it. Jamaica, throughout the 1990s and 2000s, borrowed a lot of money. A part of the problem is that we did not get value for money. We didn't get value for money. I think the Auditor General report some years ago stated that we got only 47 cents out of each dollar based on some of the investment that Jamaica undertook. Today, we are able to complete projects using our money. We're able to complete projects now that is coming back under budget. Instead, back in those days, the standard would have been for us to have cost overrun. Some of you here might not even remember Sandals White House, right? A lot of you guys wouldn't remember Sandals White House. These were mega projects in Jamaica that cost the taxpayers a lot of money. A whole lot of money. Today, hotel workers have a pension plan. Today, the government has taken steps to ensure that security guards in this country is recognized as employees and not just contract workers. These things are significant. How do you get a negative from those? I don't know. How do you get a negative from those, Jovi? I don't know. But the key is for us to stay focused and keep our eyes on the prize, because there's a target ahead of us. Jamaica wants to bring its debt to GDP down to international standard. There's one mistake that we can make in this whole process, and it's to be stupid at the polls and vote the opposition back into power. That is where the rubber would hit the road. And I have every confidence in the Jamaican people and their maturity politically, because I don't think they'll go down that road. I don't think so. And I'm looking forward to that target. I am assuming that we will get to 60 to 65% debt to GDP within another 18 months. Another 18 months. One of the things that we cannot afford is to make any mistake and voting back the opposition, who really and truly have absolutely zero plans for this country. You must trust a man when him tell you who he is. You know? The opposition leader told us that if he was government, he would not pay down the debt. Instead, he would use 2 to 4% of GDP to give back to the people. What better gift can you give to someone than the opportunity for them to be self-sufficient, for them to create opportunities for themselves and their family? What better thing can you do for your constituents than to create a conducive environment for them to grow and mature? What better gift can you give them? A brown envelope? A brown envelope? No. Create that atmosphere that persons can live and live decent. Nashu, good to see you, my brother. Thank you for joining us. Share the program. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to put it in context and we're going to wrap it up. Stick and stay. We will be right back.
It's time to come back. Back to adventurous. Being curious. Spontaneous. Back to where it all began. Dare to be bold. To be fantastic. Come back to the vibe that comes alive in Jamaica.
Yeah. Thank you for sticking and staying with us, guys. We are talking about the economy. We're talking about the fact that Jamaica's debt to GDP has gone down to 74%. It's coming from a high of 148%. And what that means is that Jamaica is now moments away from really and truly achieving first world standard in terms of economic achievement. How will this trickle down into infrastructure, into other aspects of the society, another aspect of the country? Nashu, coming from an all-time high GDP back in February 2016, when the GLP got into office, was at 145%. And in under 8 years, moving from that figure to 74% in 2023 is an amazing achievement. I couldn't say it any better, Nashu. Well said. Well said. Well said. And I've been saying this to people because I don't think we understand the magnitude of this achievement. A high debt to GDP has been the hallmark of the Jamaican economy. Under the leadership of Dr. Omar Davis and under the leadership of Dr. Peter Phillips, these were just wishful thinking. Today we can boast and we can say that we are there. We are in double digit, and not just any old double digits. We're at 74%. If 64% or 66% debt to GDP is a global standard, then we are just moments away. We have to celebrate these things. We have to celebrate these things. Another point I wanted to make is the whole issue of water. And we're hoping that the Water Commission will get its act together. There are some communities in and around Central St. James or St. James Central that have consistently been without water. And the Member of Parliament have to be trucking water to these communities over the last week or so. As grateful as those persons are for the water, I know they would prefer to have water running in their pipes. These are communities that has some of the largest catchment tanks around Jamaica. Within a mile or a mile and a quarter radius, there's about 4 humongous parish tanks in these areas. Why can't the National Water Commission come through and do what they have to do? I know they will say that some of these persons are not legitimate customers because they're not paying. Well, it is our responsibility, it's the responsibility of entities like NWC to go in and regularize them, get them on a system where they can be paid, they can pay their bills. So we look forward to that. Folks, it's been a pleasure talking about our debt to GDP. I want you guys can go ahead and post away. Tell it to your neighbor, tell it to your friend that achieving a 74% debt to GDP is not something for us to take for granted. There's a hurricane pending in the Caribbean, going after Barbados and so forth. I'm hoping that Jamaica will be spared again. But we are in a better position that in case we get hit, we can take care of certain things. Anyhow, again, it was a pleasure. Horace Headley, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Jovi Spence, as always, my brother, it's good to see you. Patroy Seal, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for holding it down. My little soldier, my new tech app. His name is Christian, popularly known as the Two Top King. He's in the chat. Follow him on his YouTube channel. He's the Two Top Kid or Two Top King. So please give him a follow on his YouTube channel. He wants to grow it. So help him to grow. We here as well is looking for you guys too who have not joined, who have not subscribed. Please go on the YouTube channel, Chops Media, and subscribe to the channel and press that notification bell. Simply means that every time we go live, every time we post a picture or video, you'll be the first to be notified. So again, come through. It was a pleasure. Devon McLennan, big up yourself as well. Shaneth McGrath, big up yourself. Good to see you. Anita Ford, Earl Ford, big up yourself. Horace Headley, Jovi Spence, my friend. Good to see you, sir. Cedric Robinson, blessings on you. To music, blessings on you as well. Donald Martin, my good friend Divi, big up yourself. Dave Camry, big up yourself. Nashu, my schoolie, big up yourself. Valerie Skeen, big up yourself. Good to see you. Thank you all for joining us. Ken us and all the Chops Media family. Love you guys. Happy you could have joined us. Until we meet again. Until we meet again. Same time. Possibly same place. Peace. I'm out.